afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff and Arnold coming at you at Spiritual Defense Headquarters. We did a podcast the other day that was just me solo, but the band is getting back together. Arnold is back from Florida, had some free time, and he says, let's get together and record something. Arnold, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Good. Well, I'm trying to say see everybody, but good to be here.
Good
afternoon. I know. Good afternoon or good morning, whatever it is for you, or good evening.
Yes.
I don't know when you're listening. But how are you, Jeff? How have you been?
Oh, I've been good. But I haven't been rolling around the floor in Florida. So
yeah.
But those were the good old days. But anyway, no, we've been doing good. I'm glad you made it back safely. I'm glad you had planes to bring you back safely.
Yeah.
Because we've had friends of ours who have not been that fortunate when it came to traveling. So I'm glad that all your travels and everything worked out splendidly.
Yeah, me too, for the most part.
Yeah.
Traveling's traveling, so.
Yeah.
But yeah. And, right now, what's going on recently in current events so people know what's going on right now is we're nearing Easter.
To say today is Good Friday.
Today is Good Friday.
2022.
2022, Good
Friday. It's ironic. It's April 15th, so it's Good Friday and Tax Day.
Oh.
So it's a polarizing day, definitely, to say the least.
Is it really Tax Day? Because then I need to stop this podcast.
Well, yeah, it's that day.
Oh no.
So that's what it is. Good Friday, April 15, 2022 is where we are today.
Yeah, and let's. I guess that it brings us into our topic because I wanted more banter, but what I had wanted to talk about, where recently, or most of the time, we talk to our friends or acquaintances about biblical things, and everyone has. I don't say everyone has, because just some people have interpretations or their own interpretations.
Right.
Especially about traditions and what to do. And today, we were talking about that earlier, what today is Good Friday for us, or Easter for us. And in the Church of Christ, we don't necessarily do any traditions that observe Good Friday.
That's I guess that's kind of a misnomer. It's just kind of people kind of do their own thing. Let me just say that some churches do. Other churches don't, because one of the groovy things that I think that the Churches of Christ have is church autonomy. Mm-hmm. In other words, the churches aren't connected to one another. So what one church decides to do in their area, the other churches do not have to follow suit. Or as I like to tell people when I'm describing this to people for the first time, it's almost like saying each individual church is individually owned and operated, by the local elders. And so again, there's some good things about that, and so again, it's like, just because you don't do something at the church building on Good Friday, it's like, oh, how dare you're not observing the day that you. It's like, whoa, slow down, because we're not the only group who does this either, and that is we partake communion every weekend. Mm-hmm. There's a few groups out there that partake of communion every weekend. As I was telling you before, I've read stories about preachers throughout history. They would partake of communion every day. Yeah. And now the irony is, and this just kind of explodes the topic a little bit, but I remember once, a couple years ago, I guess it would have been the New Year's Day for 2020, right? So the last normal so-called New Year's we had before COVID, right? Yeah. And so we did a devotional ring in the New Year thing at the church building, right, North Mission. And it was a game night and hanging out, just until midnight hit. And we had a devotional, we had some singing, and we offered communion to ring in the New Year. And the New Year for that year, again, it wasn't Sunday. I think it was a Friday or Saturday. I'd have to look. I don't remember what day it exactly was. But I remember that the following week, one or two people came up to me after hearing about what we did and whatnot. They're like, well, we didn't want to go because we didn't think it was right to have communion on any other day except for Sunday. And it's like, well, all right. but again, these are, there's also people out there that have feelings like that.
Yeah.
But they do the whole Christmas blowout thing and everything, and then there's people who don't like the Christmas stuff, and people are just people have their different thoughts, they have their different feelings and different views, and it's the obligation of God's people just to try to, again, you're trying to work with people where they are in order to just kind of shepherd them towards Christ.
Be everything for everyone.
Yes, and so not to get wrapped up in that, because so much of that is just so easy to get wrapped up into, and it can really wear you down. It can really annoy you, but again, if you're annoyed and you're wear down, then what's the temptation? To quit.
Yeah,
and we can't have that. Again, because what does the devil want? To get you to stop. So so he'll throw all this stuff at you to have to deal with people. But again, so the issue is judging one another. And the thing is that Paul told the Romans, don't judge each other. And the situation he was talking about was eating meat sacrificed to idols. Yeah. Right? So if so back in the day, you go to a motel, hotel, whatever, an inn, right? And it had a restaurant, whatever, attached to it. And you would go and order food. And without you knowing, when the food left the kitchen, but before it came to you, your waiter, waitress, whatever, would stop and bless your meal before an idol. Has nothing to do with you. It's a household god. And then they would bring it out to you. Do you eat it or not?
If I knew that that's what they did, I wouldn't have gone there in the first place.
Well, you got to put yourself back into the first century world. Chances are they would.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with eating it.
Right. Because it had nothing to do with you, right?
You're not the one praising their idol for it.
Right.
Because it comes to you, and then you say grace to God.
Right. But here's the kicker: is that and Paul was kind of it's like, look, there's nothing wrong. First point was there's nothing wrong with it. It had nothing to do with you. You didn't do it. This was done by somebody else.
Yeah.
But the second point was that, well, if you're with somebody that does offend, or if you air it out and you find out it does offend people, then don't do it in front of them, or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
In order to look out for them.
Yeah.
Paul will then say, well, may I never eat meat again. In other words, you put the issues of the brothers above your own personal wants and desires.
Yeah.
And so what is that? That's a humbling of self. That's bearing one another's burdens. That's being a servant to all people. And so again, it's back to the main point. If people want to celebrate Good Friday, God bless you. But again, there's those of us out there that either, if you want to call it celebrate, if you want to call it reflection, if you want to call it meditation, if you want to call it study of Good Friday every day.
Yeah.
So just because we don't do maybe a blowout thing on Good Friday, don't think that the day is being missed. It's not. Yeah. It's still being reflected upon. And also, to take the other view is, again, cool the jets on the judging and just, and again, it's a constant need to look at people who do big things on Good Friday or on Easter or on Christmas or things like this, and just say, oh, they're just doing it on that day so they don't have to do it any other day.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, that's not good either. Just leave them be.
Yeah.
Leave them be. Do your thing. And there you are. It's about you and God, not the people and God. It's about you and God. So.
Yeah. Because I feel we notice that, we notice, there are people who have those issues about, observing certain days, not observing certain days, doing certain traditions and stuff. And, I guess, general, lessons that some of our apostles like Paul was teaching us. Like we're talking about Romans, and we know Romans is like a book that's kind of been, I guess, the center of a lot of controversy in theology and churches. We just a little bit, and like that's also something I'd like to touch on, because it's not like I haven't like experienced it where I'm talking to someone from any denomination. It could even be in our own denomination. Honestly, like no church is perfect in my opinion. I read that in the New Testament, that even the churches that were starting out, that everyone knew the basic idea, like everyone kind of still needed direction, right? Yeah. Especially from Paul, our apostle. So a lot of people, I guess like the biggest, and this is kind of out there, far-fetched, and so I don't want to focus too much on, I guess, the idea that people do think this, but like, how people will use what's happening today now to say that this is what was prophesized in this book or in this book.
Okay, are you talking about Good Friday? Are you talking?
I'm talking about things in general. So it comes from Good Friday. It comes from traditions. It comes from just reading the Bible the way we do sometimes, right? So, like we I don't want to say misinterpret, because it comes back to like judging what other people are doing, I guess. But I guess I want to touch on like people come. Like I said, they feel that what's happening today is like prophecy.
Okay.
So I want to be more specific. Vaccine is the number of the beast.
Oh my!
Yeah, there we go. Right. So yeah. When it comes to things like that, and we're not judging. We're not supposed to judge people, and we are supposed to.
We're not supposed to judge people, but we can't teach people.
Lovingly, give the word and teach them, and hopefully they don't take it as you judging them or you trying to correct.
Well, again, we talked about this, and you think about, this might be a side topic, and I know we've covered this in our archives. If you'd like to go to the archives at the North Mission Church of Christ YouTube page, at the Spiritual Defense Recordings, it's in there. We talked about this, of how today, in this world we live in, it's such a knee-jerky, you say something against someone else's opinion, and all of a sudden it's hate speech and things like this. And so, you think about how the devil has really twisted us to just not want to learn. It's the whole my truth thing, which I despise.
Yeah.
The my truth thing. It's like, no, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
All right, truth is truth. It's like, oh, you're just old, and it's like, no, that's the definition of the word. Truth is true. Now, Arnold cannot have his truth, and I cannot have my truth, because at the end of the day,
2 + 2 is 5 for me. And
you've read 1984.
You can't tell me anything different.
No, but that's the thing is that's bull. Yeah. One of us is wrong. Okay, you say, if I would say 2 + 2 is 5, you would say 2 + 2 is 4. Okay, one of us is wrong. And especially if like we're building something, or we're in some sort of situation where measurement matters, this could have very bad effects. One of us is wrong. Somebody needs to be corrected. And so, but again, it's the attitude with which it's done. So we don't need to be people who just scream off correction.
Yeah.
That's just a sign of immaturity. That is intellectual immaturity. And that's kind of something that I see happening in the world more and more. Yeah. It's becoming more and more you cannot question. And it's like science, for example. He's like, you can't question the science. It's like, hello, science is there to be questioned.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. You're supposed to be able to question it, to test it, and if it continues to work, if I pick up a bottle and drop it, okay, cool, gravity still works now. I know now, but it's there for it to be tested, and so it's there for it to be questioned. And so, if I'm not allowed to question it, what does that make me? I'm a slave to whoever making the rules, and so so it is okay to question. It is okay, because this is also how people learn. Some people say that there's no such thing as a dumb question. I mostly believe. In my opinion, there's only one dumb question, and that is the question that's not asked. So again, if people aren't comfortable or willing or wanting to ask the questions, you're never going to learn. All right. So going back to this whole thing, today looking at prophecies and things like this. Okay, how much time do we have? Okay.
Got lots of time.
Yeah,
That's why I brought it up.
Okay, well that's the thing. Okay, so because again, you hear this stuff, and other things, like every time a war happens, it kind of it's on top of the destruction and the civilians and the non-combatants who are going to be put in harm's way. My heart and prayers truly go after them. But again, on the flip side of these things, when I hear about wars happening, I do an inward eye roll, because I honestly know that it's just a matter of time before somebody asks me, "Is this the end of the world?" Now, the reason they ask me if this is the end of the world is because Jesus said in his last sermon that he gave in Matthew of how there's going to be wars and rumors of wars before everything happens. And so every time a war happens, this is it. Stop it. Please stop it. You're making my head hurt. How many times do you have to be wrong? Nobody knows when Christ is coming back. Okay? Just because there's a war doesn't mean that's going to be when Christ is coming back. Okay, so there's that. And also the mark of the beast is another one. You talked about vaccines. Now, I'm trying to think. That's probably the first mark of the beast that you've had to experience being a new Christian, right?
Or monster cans count?
Oh, there you go. Yes. Are you familiar with that one?
Count?
Yes, the monster cans. I can give you a list. The list. Okay, now the new one is COVID. It's like you get the COVID is the mark of the beast. Oh, watch out now. Then it was the Monster energy drinks, because the M on the front, if like you break it apart, it's like the Hebrew letter or number for 6, and so it's then it was the Walt Disney signature.
Oh, really?
Now I'm talking about the old school. Now you go back,
he swoop it.
Right, the way he'd swoop it, and if you look at the dots, the tittles above the eyes, it's always a loop, right? So they would take the loop in the, I think, I'm not looking at it right now, obviously, but if you look at the loop and the W, and then the loop in Disney, and then the loop in the Y, there's 3 6s in that. He's the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
Or you can look at Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, when I was in preaching school, we were doing the book of Revelation in class, and our dean was teaching that class, Ronnie Wiggins, God bless him. He was the teacher that I was scared of the most. I flunked 2 of his classes, had to retake them both before I graduated. But anyway, he was telling us a story about how a guy came in and was wanting to go to school there, right? And so they talked for an hour and a half, had a pleasant conversation, and was about to sign him up and everything. And the guy said, "Well, hold on." He said, "Yes." I said, "I cannot go to this school until I hear your theory of the Antichrist." So the dean talks about the Antichrist, and it's first of all, there's not one, there's several, because there's an S at the end. It's not Antichrist, it's Antichrists. and in 1 John, yes, in 1 John. And so, so just kind of talk about that. And it's basically, an Antichrist is anybody who denies that Jesus is the Son of God, and he just totally denies that. He's Antichrist, he's against Christ. That's what that means. So it doesn't have to be one major singular person. There's been oodles of Antichrist. Then he's like, no, I can't go to school here. He's like, why? He says, I cannot go to school anywhere that does not believe that Ronald Reagan wasn't the Antichrist. Yes.
Capital T.
Yes, and that one, apparently my teacher at the time hadn't heard this one before, so he's like, "Okay, please explain." He says, "Well, apparently, and I forget what Ronald Reagan's middle name is, but Ronald, his middle name, and Reagan each have 6 letters."
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the Ronald Reagan. See, but we can do more. We can do the microchip. The microchip. People thought that we were going to be microchipped, and the microchip was going to be the sign of the beast. Or then it was barcodes before it was microchips. In other words, there's always been something.
Yeah.
I tell audiences a lot, probably to the point that they start telling me to shut up. But if you're out there listening, do a Google search of predictions of end times, and look at what comes up. I mean, there's a grand old list from that goes all the way back to before Jesus was born by a long shot, and about times in which people predicted that the world was going to And guess what? They've always been wrong because we're still here and the earth is still holding all of our stuff. So it's, so you predict this stuff and people get wrapped up into it. I've talked to people like online and in person and just said, I'd love to talk to you about the Bible. It's like, okay, great. Well, we'll do the Gospels and let me introduce you to Jesus. Like, no. I just want to do eschatology, which is the study of biblical prophecy. And I'm like, nope, not doing it. It's like when I shared this story at church recently, and that is when I worked in Oklahoma. I was teaching the teens class, and this teens class was filled up with a bunch of people who didn't go regularly and didn't put a lot of serious thought into it, and we were getting done with what we were doing. So I was like, okay, what do y'all want to study? And they were like, Revelation, and I said, no, we're not doing it, because you're not ready. And so, but it's because of mythology, because of movies, because of just, again, biblical books that are just used and abused 10 ways from Sunday. And there's so much false teaching out there that people just get confused over this stuff. And so when anything serious or threatening comes along, they want to turn it to biblical prophecy and just say that Christ is coming back soon. And it's like, okay, read the letters that Paul wrote to the Thessalonians. There were people back in the day, like only a decade or two removed from Jesus ascending into heaven, in which people were just sitting around waiting for Christ to come back. Okay, I mean it's like, come on, we have stuff to do, we have life to live. We don't have a chance to just sit around and do nothing.
No.
But speaking of the mark of the beast, you know what the mark of the beast is?
Like the numbers?
No, not just the number. The number is 666. Everybody who's seen The Omen, they know that.
But the actual mark of the beast.
Yes.
Now I might be a little unfamiliar of how it's described. Then I might have forgot.
Okay, well, the whole point of the mark of the beast was that it was obviously it was a mark, right? And if you go back and read its section in Revelation, we do these without any preparation. Ronald. Who are you? Arnold.
I'm Ronald Reagan.
Arnold just surprises me with these topics, and we go off the top of our noggins. So if you go to Revelation, you find the section that deals with the 666. There's a whole account around it, and the point of it is that it was a mark that was given to people so that they could go into commerce. In other words, if you wanted to do business, you had to have the mark of the beast, right? And so, you go back to what was going on back in the day, and in the Roman Empire or whatnot, the Roman authorities kept track over who was offering sacrifices to Caesar and who was not, who was doing that kind of, because that was a major deal. And so if you were offering sacrifices to Caesar, you got a letter that showed that you're loyal to the empire, loyal to Caesar, and you're sacrificing to him. And so then you would be able to engage in business. But if you refused to offer a sacrifice to Caesar, you were put on the naughty list, so to speak. They kept tabs on that. You didn't get your letter. You didn't get to engage in business. Right. So again, the people look for an individual mark, like a specific mark. And what I try to tell people is like, don't look at the mark, look at the mindset. Is the world trying to get you to do something that's going to violate your relationship with God? Because they say, well, it's the mark. It's like, take COVID for example. The COVID could fit because if we didn't, we couldn't have gone to work if we didn't get our vaccine, or whatever the case may be. And so it was a mark of the beast because we weren't able to engage in commerce because we wouldn't go and get the vaccine. It's like, whoa, slow down. Did that violate your relationship with God? What's the higher purpose? Was Revelation written to safeguard our economy and our ability to make money? Or was it written to safeguard and motivate us to be strong followers of God? And so if we're going to start dealing with things that can interfere with our relationship with God, stop us from joining together, or in any way inhibit our worship of God in some way, okay, now we can start going into mark of the beast territory. But it's not for every little thing, and just because somebody has the mark of the beast, so-called, does not mean that the world is coming to an end. It just means that worldly governments are trying to clamp down on Christianity, is what that means, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And that's the short answer.
Yeah, and I feel like that was something I guess the apostles were trying to, I want to say warn, but like help people understand back in that day, right? This idea of because I mean even now we get caught up in like the tradition of things of, well, I'm doing this and not doing this, so I'm doing bad, right, or whatever. And it's more than that, like you said. It's more than it's your walk, your endurance. You know how you do it. It's more than just, oh, I'm a businessman, so I'm evil.
Right.
Right. Like I'm a businessman because, well, this world. I mean, to live in it, I gotta make money. So I engage in business, but that doesn't necessarily make me or give me the mark of the beast now. Like you said, because it's all about, does it take me away from Christ?
Exactly.
And that's what, that's I guess what I want to come back to. Like what I see still in people today is like they get caught up in that kind of stuff, the little things like the monster cans and the vaccine and all that stuff, and not to, so they don't have to focus so much on their own walk.
Well, it's, I'm trying to think of how to say this. You know, people tend not to give thought to their walk with the Lord if they're not walking with the Lord, until something obvious happens. You know, it's like, how old were you when the attacks of 9/11 happened?
I think it was 9.
Okay. So you might be a little young to remember this, but after the attacks of 9/11, I was still in Dallas at the time, and for like the next month after that, churches were full.
Yeah,
I mean, across the board. I mean, not necessarily just ours, but churches across the board were full or had way more people than they had, for the previous several years, because something happened, right? Something happened. We were attacked, even though we were in Texas and it happened in New York, we were still attacked in our country, and that just doesn't happen often. And so people became lackadaisical, and so now all of a sudden this horrendous thing happened, and it freaked people out, and people all of a sudden started having thoughts. Well, I could have been in that building, or I could have been here. I could have, been there. I could have, my life could have been lost today. And so people sought the Lord. But then, like I said, it only lasted for about a month. Why?
Because I don't know. People.
Nothing else happened. And so since nothing else really happened in America, people got back to their old life. Well, okay, maybe that was it, and so now I can get back to my real life.
Yeah.
And so again, that's the thing of it is, it's the idea of scaring people straight. People need to be scared straight. Something's going to happen to get the people's attention, and then they'll get their lives together, and there you are. Which is why I think is a major reason why Jesus taught the second coming is going to happen like a thief in the night. He doesn't want people to be scared and ready.
Yeah.
He wants people to be as they are when he comes back, so that he can see, or so that people will see who's really taking this seriously and who is not. So again, that's why people look for signs. That's why people look for portents. That's a good old word. But that's why people look for this stuff, because they don't want to be fooled. They want to, we talked about this, I think you were there or not, but I brought this up in a Wednesday night class where we're going through the book of Luke. And I was like, why didn't Jesus say, one day in the year of our Lord 2028 on August the 16th, I shall come back? It's like, why? Why not do that? Because how would people live up until that day?
Yeah, they wouldn't get their act together until like maybe 2 years before. All right,
or 2 hours before.
2 hours before.
Because I would have a feeling if it did go that way on August 16th, 2028, and I just pulled that number out of thin air, nobody's like that day, I would be very busy. But up until that day, I would be very bored.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's how people don't want to get serious about the Lord until they have a reason to get serious about the Lord.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's like saying that, I'm married, but I don't really want to give serious thought to my marriage until I have to. It's like, that don't even make sense. But that's how people take their relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, was it Carl or someone who was mentioning, it's like when you see God, do you want to be the type of person who was like, oh, hey, hi, I was just talking about you.
Right.
Like, I was just thinking about you, and hey, here you are. Or do you want to be the person who's like, well, who are you?
Right.
Like, why am I here?
Yeah. I mean, and also, and that's from our side, but the truth is like when we stand before the Lord one day, that can go one of two ways as well. Either it can be the well done, good and faithful servant, or it can be the I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoer. And so, but again, we sit back and think that we have no capacity to decide how that meeting is going to go one day.
Yeah.
We just want to be prepared in case something happens. Yeah. So I'll keep my eyes out for the mark of the beast. I'll keep my eyes out for the wars and the rumors of the wars, and I'll keep my eyes out for these books that come out about blood moons and coming, doing the Bible calculations to figure out when the day that Christ is coming back and all this, just so that when that period of time comes close, then I can get serious. But if I have no reason to get serious, then I won't.
Yeah. So it reminds me of Constantine. He didn't get serious until he was about to die.
Well, I could be totally wrong, but I think it was Constantine who said something along the lines of, "Give me chastity and give me purity, but just don't give them to me right now." I mean, that's the mentality.
That's how everyone acts right now.
Well, everyone, again, you're broad stroking.
I'm a broad stroke.
Yes, I know. That's how Arnold acts.
That's how I think worldly people, most of the world, a lot of non-believers, that's how they live life. Because, I mean, when you're a believer, you understand that you got to live the exact opposite way of that.
Right.
In order to truly live.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Again, it goes back to what God wants. What does God want to see? Right? And that is, again, if he told everybody specifically when all this is going to come to an end, he wouldn't see devotion.
Yeah.
Who are the devoted ones? The devoted ones are going to be the ones who seek to live the life of Christ. If Christ comes back in their lifetime, or if Christ doesn't come back in their lifetime, they're still living the life.
Yeah.
And that's devotion. C.S. Lewis in the Screw Tape Letters once said something along the lines of, the dangerous Christian is the one who looks around at the world and sees every reason not to believe in God, but believes in God anyway. I mean, it's and that's a lot of that is speaking true today. I mean,
that is the truth. Yeah, no, that is totally true, because we see, and then other people who are maybe non-believers will think about like that. I see the world this way. I see the world as evil. How can there be a God? And one's like, well, there is evil in this world, and that's why there is a God.
Well, and that's the thing. I got hit with that question. I'm teaching the teens class on Sunday morning through the month of April at the North Mission Church of Christ, and I'm doing this lesson series on love, death, and time, right? And I was using the parable of the rich fool as a point maker, talking about how Jesus is talking to the crowds about things like being willing to confess Jesus before others, not being scared of the false teachings of the Pharisees, and so all this type of stuff, fearing God, not fearing the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and being wary of the ease, the false teaching of them, and being willing to represent Christ and to confess Christ to others. All of a sudden, this guy in the crowd just says, "Hey, Jesus, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." And it's like, what in the world? And I asked them, like I always ask this question when I teach that, is, if you had one chance, you had one opportunity to speak to Jesus, or you had one opportunity to ask Jesus a question, even though that guy, he made a demand, he didn't ask a question, what would it be? Right? And one of the teens in the class is, well, why does God allow so much evil in the world? I was like, you know what, that is a good question. I just don't have time to answer that, because it's a question that's good, but it also takes a little bit of time to answer.
And it is a question that I think everyone has. Like, not broad stroking again, but I mean, so not everyone, but a good majority of the people that I speak to, that I'm trying to reason with, that's a big thing. It's like, okay, if God is loving, if he's so good, if he's the God of the New Testament, like, Why is there evil? 2, why is there so much evil in the New Testament? And 3, why does he punish them if he's a loving God?
Oh.
And we have 15 minutes to hash that out. Let's go.
Okay, well, what order do you want me to take these?
So let's start with the question. Let's start with the question that the kids normally ask you, or the kid asked you.
Okay,
like,
why is there evil?
Why is there evil in the world?
Okay, well, what I would respond with is, did God create evil?
And I know this answer. No.
So this is no, because this is the thing.
Yeah.
God did not create evil.
This is something people need to understand.
Yes, this is major. This is major. So this is we'll probably park here the most. God did not create evil.
Yeah.
When God created, if you go back to Genesis 1 and 2, you read about the Garden of Eden, right? And after every time God created something, he said that it was good.
Yeah.
So in essence, what we're getting out of this is God created a perfect world.
Yeah.
There was no evil there. There was no sin there. There was no death there. In fact, you can read in Genesis 1 where he's talking about the creation of man in day 6. Everything was vegetarian. Mm-hmm. I remember I made this point when I was in Oklahoma where they do tons of deer hunting. About how the class walk out. It was like, what? No, I want my deer meat. No, everything was vegetarian. I mean, the Bible says it right there. I give you every seed and every leafy thing to eat. Man did not start eating meat until after the flood in Genesis 9. That's when that starts. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. The first one's in Genesis 1 where man's told, you eat plants and everything eats plants. God gave everything to eat plants. And then in Genesis 9, after the flood, God says, okay, you can eat meat now. And the relationship between man and animals changed.
I remember, I mean, yes, I'm familiar.
But it's funny because I've taught Genesis to people who've been Christian for decades. And it's one of those little details that we don't pay attention to. Okay, so back to the main point. God created a perfect world. There was no sin, there was no evil, there was no death. Right? And it could have stayed that way. And God made Adam and Eve, placed them in the garden. And he said, there's a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do not eat from it, because if you eat from it, then you shall surely die. So, if they haven't asked the next obvious question, then, I've been known to be, sometimes I can be a bit sarcastic, because I remember talking to this one person, they're like, okay, so God didn't create evil, okay. And I was like, well, you're not going to ask the next obvious question? It's like, well, what's the next obvious question? I mean, come on. If you're going to question me about the motivations of God, then why not ask, why did God create the tree of the knowledge of good and evil?
Yeah, this is true. Because he didn't, I feel like I know why.
Well, why? Tell us, Arnold.
Well, because the important thing about God and his relationship with humans is our free will.
Uh-huh.
So he puts the tree there. He says, he just gives you the warning, hey, if you eat from it, you'll surely die.
Right.
Fast forward to a couple, I think maybe the next chapter.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Then you have the serpent, or Satan, giving you the temptation, giving you the whisper, the idea, and you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. It's my choice.
Why did God have to have the tree? Why was it necessary? Because that's the thing.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this.
Yes.
He has to have the tree. He has to give us a choice, because if it was God's will to keep us in the garden without a choice to leave, he wouldn't be the good God that he is.
Exactly.
All good, all loving, all righteous.
Yes.
He'd be a fascist.
That's right. I mean, that's really the truth. And one of the reasons I think people now I'm broad stroking. One of the reasons why people that struggle with these concepts struggle is because of they don't like the type of parent God is. Mm-hmm. These days sometimes you have people who are called helicopter parents. They hover around the kids. Mm-hmm. Then you have other people who are called bubble wrap parents. Mm-hmm. They figuratively wrap their kids in bubble wrap in order to protect them from all sorts of evil. And then you have the lawnmower parents. And these are the ones that basically mow down any obstacle in front of their kid's path in order to make their path easier. And I read these 3 concepts in an article years ago when I was getting ready for a lesson. And one of the first examples that I came across in this article, you went to college, I went to college. Anybody who went to college get a kick out of this. A mother once called the president of the university, I don't know which university, but the president of the university, to complain to the president of the university that her darling little son is having a disagreement with his dorm roommate, and that the president of the university needed to do something about it. Wow. Yeah. The president of the university continued to say something along the lines of, "Ma'am, it's great to hear from you, and I'm willing to listen to any issue that you may have, but as far as this goes, there's other people that you can call. You can call the housing, you can call the person who's in charge of the floor, and then you let them handle it. I cannot handle this. I'm too busy. Have a good day." But that was the thing. That was the point. Is like, why would you do that for your kid who's in college?
Yeah.
And now here's and now some people it's like, yes, right on. That's the type of parents we need to be. And it's like, no, that's the lie. That is not the type of parents we need to be. But more importantly, that is not the type of parent God is.
Yeah.
God wants relationship with us. He did not want puppets. He did not want robots. And when people know that, they say that all the time, but I'm scared that the meaning gets lost. What this means is, literally, God wants people to come to him of their own free will.
Yeah.
There had to be the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, because if there was no way to escape the Garden of Eden, then the Garden of Eden would have been a prison.
Yeah.
Even if the prison cell is comfortable, it's still a prison if there's no way out. Love dictates there had to have been a way out if they wanted to take it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No,
I mean,
it makes complete sense.
Does
Makes
it?
complete sense.
Okay. So I mean, because you kind of put it in the realm of if you knew somebody that was in some sort of relationship and they were not allowed to leave the house because spouse said so, what would you think?
They're imprisoned in their own home.
Yeah, I mean, we would the attitudes that we frown upon in our society, and I would agree with you. If I knew of a married couple and one of them wouldn't allow the other to leave the house, it's like, okay, something needs to happen here. That is not normal, nor healthy, nor legal.
I go grapple. That's how I deal with my problems now.
But the thing is like, but we want God to do that to us. But then we gripe God if we feel like he's doing it. But it's like, well, first of all, God doesn't do that. If we do not want God, we do not have to have God.
Yeah.
I think it's A.W. Tozier, who is a past preacher. He once said something along the lines of, everybody is as close to God as they want to be. So, to have the type of relationship which God wants to have with his creation, which is super intimate, super close, but it also has to be 100% based on the choice of the individual. There had to be the tree.
Yeah.
There had to be a way, or else it's the jail cell. Now, again, we like to give Adam and Eve a pass. Who said they had to be next to the tree? Did anybody say that they had to live next to the tree? That they even had to walk next to the tree? Did they even
how
have to
big
be
was the
over
garden?
there?
I feel like they could have given themselves some distance.
Right. I mean, so again, it's like, why were they there?
Yeah, I think that goes back to human nature. Like we kind of like the danger.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, they eat of the tree. They eat of the fruit of the tree. Their eyes are open. Now they feel shame. Shame leads to fear. Fear leads to them, ratting each other out to God. And then you have the first deaths.
After with Cain and Abel.
Nope. Before Cain and Abel.
What?
Yes.
They kill animals.
God.
Then he
Go ahead.
He made clothes for them.
Out of what?
Out of animals.
Out of leather, yes. He made leather garments for, and again, it's one of those details that get to pass. But it's like, wait a minute. Think now, where does the leather come from?
That just made me sad. Wow.
That, people say, well, he could have made it out of anything. You're right, but did he? Probably not. Why? Because he's trying to prove a point. God's whole point about the tree was, if you eat from the tree, you shall die. Now, obviously, it wasn't an immediate death, but what it led to was just the ability for the body, for human beings to die.
Yeah.
Because if they never ate from that tree, they would have had access to the tree of life, or God would have kept them going. But it was death came from the disobedience of God and eating from the tree. Yeah. So that's the Bible tells us this is where death came from. So now God's like, okay, here's death. Here's these clothes that are made out of these wolves that were over here that you petted this morning. You get to wear them now.
You named them.
I know.
You named them wolf.
Yeah, that's right. And so, so when people say, well, why does God allow so much evil in the world? It's like, whoa, hold on now. Come on now, humanity. Don't bow out. Stand up and rejoice. God created the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh, and then man created evil on day number 8.
Yeah.
Why don't we just stand up and take credit for what it is that we have done?
Another human condition. People don't like to own up to.
No, they don't. But they want God. They don't want God to control all their life until something bad happens, and they like to gripe God and say, "Well, God, why did you allow this to happen to me?"
Yeah.
But you think about what we have here. We have 7.5 billion people on Earth, right? All of us have the capacity for free will. Every single one of us. All of us are, lack of a better phrase, all of us are the main star in our own novels. So you have 7.5 billion people's worth of free will happening on this planet. Do we think that there's not going to be any collisions? And then it's like, well, God could stop it. Yeah, but how much of this do we run into? Not necessarily our own, somebody else, and we're just getting somebody else's way. It has to be like this so that those who are devoted to God can show their quality to God. You cannot, now that we live in the world we live. Now again, it was different before Adam and Eve ate the fruit. It was different. Absolutely. But now that we have the knowledge of good and evil, that's why this is so important. Love cannot be seen unless the capacity for hate or the choice for hate is there.
Yeah.
Same thing with peace. Peace is so important because you could have also done war. And again, just on down the line.
Yeah.
Gentleness is so important because you could have mistreated somebody. Now we have the ability to show God our quality through our moral choices.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not God's fault that we have evil in the world. It's not God's fault that all these bad things happen. Man's doing it, and God's just fixing it. God's in the position to fix things and to make right the messes that we make.
Yeah. And to take what Satan had meant for evil.
Right, and turn it into good. At the same time, because then people say, well, why don't God do it faster? Because at the same time, God still wants as many people to be saved. Yeah. It's like, Peter would tell the churches, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. God is not slow in keeping his promise as we count slowness, but he's trying to wait for as many people as possible to be saved. And it's like, take the Apostle Paul, for example. Paul tells us himself in the book of Acts, he's killed people, he's thrown people into prison, and he tortured people. What would have happened if God struck Paul dead right after the stoning of Stephen, so to speak?
Paul wouldn't have been able to do what he did.
Exactly. Do some back to the future thinking.
Saul wouldn't have been Paul.
There's been a time paradox. Okay, The gospel wouldn't have gone out to the Gentiles through the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul wouldn't have written the biblical letters. And again, this Apostle Paul, who killed, murdered, tortured, and imprisoned Christians, also wrote 14 books of the New Testament. So he, so he was busy. But we wouldn't have those, and he would have never been a Christian, and so he would have been condemned. Yeah. So again, that's something else that we got to look at. Yeah, bad things happen, and we want justice. But do we trust God enough for God to do justice? Because God is still trying to work in people's lives. He's still trying to get people's attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes the truth is that the people that we are wishing God to kill and take out might one day become very powerful Christians for his cause. But if God took them out now, they wouldn't have the ability to become what they could. But man, we're talking about a whole new level of spiritual maturity when it comes to these types of topics. So, again, and it's hard to do short answers on this stuff, but I don't know where you are in your questions list that you wanted me to address.
I think we only had time for that one. But it's something good to think about because, even with that one question, although that one answer, a lot of the other questions potentially can be answered. Because it all goes back to the same thing. The reason why, going back to kind of summarizing, the reason why there was a way out of the garden, the reason why we were given the choice, and up until now, the reason why all this is still here. It's just people and this is the reality. People don't want to believe in the creation story, and that's their thing. That's going to be their problem. That's going to be their hiccup,
Right.
and their trip up. And they're going to be asking, well, why does God, allow good and evil, or allow evil? It's like, well, first of all, do you even believe in God in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, did you even believe in God created good? Because now you're just griping at something you don't
I
believe.
have a rule, and depending on the situation, like if someone's mourning the death of a loved one, I'm not going to say this. But if I'm having a conversation, and we're like just having a conversation, nothing major going on, and we're just talking about God, and I ask the question, when they bring up stuff like this, I ask, do you believe in God?
Yeah.
And they say no. And it's like, okay, if you don't believe in God, then why are you blaming God? If you don't believe in God, you don't get to blame God.
Yeah.
If you do not believe that God is real, then you have to blame something else, because God's not part of your equation.
Yeah.
So then what's wrong with the world? And then that's where I'll leave it with them. But something else that we need to remember is that the devil is our enemy, and the devil hates us, and the devil is called the god of this world.
Yeah.
And and he has his claws in so much evil that all the evil that's going on in this world is because of the temptations and the sins in which he presents to us. And we talk about the Bible, and it's interesting. I saw this on a video that our friend Carl shared with me the other day, talking about the devil. It's a very good video. You can see this video on the Spiritual Defense Facebook page.
I think I had seen it.
Right. Anyway, it's a very good video, and they make an interesting point. And it says, isn't it interesting that the two most debated books in the Bible are Genesis and Revelation?
The beginning and the end.
The beginning and the end. And it's like, why? Well, it's like Genesis shows us the capacity of Satan to do evil, and Revelation shows us the ultimate end of Satan. And so what are the two books that he doesn't want us to know about? The way he works and what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
And so again, so you cannot take, we're talking about temptation and sin and all this, but the reality is like behind all of it there is a big enemy, and that's the devil. He is the enemy, and I believe in him very much. And he is going to tempt us to blame God. Why is it that God gets so much blame, but the devil doesn't? It's like, let's give credit to where credit is due, if we're going to insist on doing this.
Yeah.
And so, while we're being sidetracked with prophecies and marks of the beast, and trying to look at the world to try to figure out, okay, maybe Christ is coming back, I need to get my life in order now. It's like, why don't we instead go to war against the devil and his angels, and go to war against our own evil impulses, give ourselves to the Lord and wage in the spiritual warfare so that we can walk in oneness of God. Because the truth of the matter is, winning this world that's not the goal. This is a fallen world. This world will one day be destroyed. Our goal as Christians is to be on a search and rescue mission. We're trying to find as many people as we can that we can help save from this place, so that we can be with God one day. That's the goal. Our goal isn't to be comfortable here, but to look forward to being with God over there.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be comfortable right now.
Yeah. As Arnold sits there in his leather
I have
office
a very
chair.
comfy chair. It was donated. It's cool. But I think we're gonna have to stop there though.
Okay. Well, we can pick this up.
We can pick. Yeah, this is a good convo, a good topic. I think a lot of people, want this kind of subject matter.
Right.
Like I said, because I pick up on it a lot when I'm speaking with people of especially of other denominations, out there in the world and stuff. So it's something good to have equipped. If we're talking about spiritual defense,
Right.
we want to know these things and be ready to give that answer. But until next time, if people want to ask us anything, or if they have more questions about this subject in particular, they can message us, message you, find us on Facebook.
That's
Jeff
right.
Laplace, Arnold
Jeff
Martinez.
LUP, capital PLACE.
They can look on Spiritual Defense. You can
On-
look at our Facebook page and on YouTube
And then on SoundCloud.
and on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And also our sermons are every Sunday.
Yeah. We have church. If you're in the Rio Grande Valley, check us out. We're in Palmhurst on 3 Mile Road in between Stewart and Bryan, 1410 East Mile 3 Road in Palmhurst. And we have Bible classes at 9:30. We have worship service at 10:30, and then we have things that just happen during the week. Some are planned, some aren't, and we just again we get together. We talk about the Bible. We lift each other up, and we strive to carry on in this world around us. Try to seek to save as many as we possibly can. So if you're in a position where you do not think that you have a relationship with God and are curious about having one, again, look us up, because as we talked about today, people try to figure out when Christ is coming back. You're not going to be able to do that math. Nobody knows. So the goal is to be ready, because it can happen literally any moment of any day. Are you ready to meet the Lord? If not, let's talk. So Arnold, it's great seeing you again.
It's good seeing you. And everyone, if you're celebrating, happy Easter. Have a great weekend.
All right.
All right.